Bienvenidos a nuestro segundo episodio de Wáchame, Testimonios of Resiliencia. Yo soy Rosario Domínguez.
Y yo soy Nancy Domínguez Fred. And today we're going to talk about deportations and family separations, which is a topic that you might be familiar with that might have affected you directly.
Yes, so in today's episode, we have invited Patsy Montesinos. Actually, Patsy used to be Nancy's student in high school when Nancy was a high school teacher. So I heard a little bit about her story. Obviously, today we're going to go deeper into it. And I thought it was very impactful. So we really wanted to share her story as our first guest. So I don't know, Nancy, since you were her teacher, you can share a little bit about her bio if you'd like.
Yeah. I'll read her bio and then I'll share a little bit about Patsy from my perspective. And thank you so much for being here. Like Rosario said, your testimony, your story is so powerful, and I'm so proud of you for how much, so much that you have accomplished, basically almost on your own, right? So her bio is Patsy's a senior at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She's a part-time reporter for La Voz, Chatham, adjacent to Chatham News and Records, plus that serves the growing Latinx community. In the past, she was named one of the 5 ProPublica emerging reporters. She has also served as a producer and anchor for her school's Spanish and English language newscasts, produced a radio show, and reported for her school's sportscast. Her coverage of Venezuelans, which she wrote from Colombia, won a national award for the Society of Professional Journalists. In addition, her content of a series of campus crimes won a regional award from the Society of Professional Journalists. Patsy was born in North Carolina to 2 Mexican immigrant parents. And she moved to Mexico at the age of 10 and returned to the U.S. around the age of 15, correct? And from my perspective as a teacher, Patsy is a brilliant, intelligent person. Es una luchadora, and she always figures out ways to get where she wants to be. Mostly, like I said, on her own. So I'm really, really proud of you. I'm so excited to learn more about your story because I know parts of it as being your teacher, but I'm really... Estoy muy emocionada de saber un poquito más and for others to listen to your wonderful story and how you have sort of figured out ways to stay here, being away from your family, which is really hard, and just how you're navigating life and almost finished with your undergrad degree. So thank you so much. And
So these accomplishments that you just heard, they didn't come easy, obviously, for Patsy. Patsy's dad got deported when she was in elementary school. And so just like you heard. So Patsy, bienvenida. Gracias por aceptar esta invitación. So we kind of just want you to start telling your story. How old were you? What was that moment like? And kind of what happened afterwards?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's kind of funny because the other day I was going through my old documents in Mexico when I went to visit my dad over December, and I found a certificate that I got from your classroom. And it was I think I was the most smiling or something. And the other one was the most brave, and I was oh, I just from being from your classroom. But yeah, so I was born in Concord, North Carolina, and my dad immigrated to North Carolina before my mom, and they actually had my sister who's older than me. She was born in Mexico. So when my dad left, my mom was already pregnant. And so after my sister was born, when she was around 3, I think my mom came, and then my sister stayed with my grandma. And then they brought her. No, I think she might have left when my sister was only 1, but they brought my sister to the United States when she was 2, I think 2 or 3, with a family's birth certificate, because back then it was super easy. So they just flew her in with another person's birth certificate. And then I was born when my sister was 3 here in America. And actually my dad didn't even want more kids because he already had daughters from a previous marriage. So that's pretty funny. And yeah, I mean, we had a normal life. I remember my parents opened a business when I was young, and we had a nice house, a middle income life. I remember the house we lived in, it was a brick, kind of that American dream with the white picket fence. And then we had a pool in the backyard. We had a little park, a trampoline. We even had like a garage in our backyard that we turned into like a guest home. So like for like two immigrants, that came here with nothing, like we were doing pretty good. And I like family would always come over to our house, and like I mean, I just have pretty good memories like back in our old house. And then like my dad wanted to open a business. So he sold that house to his like sister. And then we moved into some apartments, and he opened like right down the road, like 5 minutes, we could walk to it. He opened like a Concord, like it's called Concord Polishing, like Concord Chroming and Polishing. And it's still open today. And so like when he started his business, he like wanted to become a citizen. And I mean, that was always the goal, like, to become a citizen and stay in this country. So I think like somewhere along the lines, the lawyer filled out the paperwork wrong. And I don't know like the exact story, but like he like because he was applying to citizenship, and like I think they filed for asylum, and Mexico doesn't fall under asylum. So that's when like he got deported. So I was like 10 when it happened. And I just like I remember that day like very clearly. Like it was just a normal morning. Like I was getting ready to go to school. It was the day like so it was the day of his birthday, but the morning of his birthday, which is even crazier to think about. Like we were like it was like him and my sister share the same birthday. So like that day was like 6 in the morning, and he was like getting ready to go to work. And that's like when ICE like came. And so we were sleeping in my parents' room. No, we were in our room. So we had a little bunk bed, and I used to sleep on the bottom, and my sister used to sleep on the top. And my dad, when he walked outside, like they were already waiting for him. So he didn't even like turn on his car. So they just like took him, and then they came like and knocked on the door. Um, and then my mom opened it, and she like, she didn't know what was going on. Like, I mean, I could imagine, because at this point, like we're still sleeping, and on the um sofa was like two of my cousins that my mom like babysat. Um, so like I could just imagine like what was going on through her mind, because then they like entered our room, and this is when I woke up, like me and my sister was like they like pointed flashlights like at in our eyes. And that's how like we were like, what's wrong? Like, I mean, we're just kids, right? Like I was 7, my sister was 10. And yeah, like that's when we came out, like he was already arrested.
Wow. Um, how did you feel in that moment? You were a 10-year-old girl, what do you remember what your feelings were in that moment when you saw that happening?
Yeah, I was like pretty confused at first. Like I didn't know what was going on. I mean, it was a moment that like, most immigrant families talk about. Like unfortunately, like it's something that like my parents had already like sat us down since like I was young, to tell us that like if one day they were taken away, they would never like really tell us why. Or like I remember I was so young, I didn't really understand like the difference between immigration and criminality. So like at that time I was like, oh, like my dad's not a criminal, like why are they taking him? And so like I kind of always knew about this moment, even though I couldn't understand it because I was so young. And like thank God they left my mom, because I remember my mom was like so scared. And like I remember the officer telling my mom, like, we're not going to take you, like we're only here for like your like him, which is like, something that they don't do now. Like now they like, if they go somewhere, they pretty much take everyone. So I'm really like, and it's hard because I'm like thankful that they left my mom, but at the same time like they took my dad away. So I mean, my mom still forced us to go to school that day, which is crazy. She was like, y'all are still going, like, go catch the school bat. Like, Latinos are always like, no matter what happens, you have to like work for what you're here for, which is like a better life, a better education.
Can you walk us through how your life changed? Because you said that you had a pretty like middle class life. Your parents were business owners. How did your life change after your dad left? And how did your mom, she now all of a sudden became like the person, the head of the household. Like, how did that transition affect your lives?
Yeah.
Honestly, so much changed. Like, for most, like statistically, because I'm doing like a thesis paper on like deportation and the effects it has like on children. And like statistically, like most dads are deported, which are like the head of the household. So like financial instability, like my mom, we barely saw her anymore because she was like juggling like 2 to 3 jobs to keep us like afloat. And like although we still had the business, like my dad wasn't there to run it. So it was just like chaos, I would say. Like we had to like leave the apartment because we couldn't afford it anymore. So we like moved into like the garage of our old home. And I mean, I don't remember how long we stayed there, but it just like didn't work out. So we had to move out, and we moved with this lady that was actually my mom's like long distant like aunt, and her name was Ama. She was like grandma. Have you ever seen like Coco? Like
Yeah.
No.
like Mama Coco's daughter, how she's like harsh, but she's also really sweet. That's like Ama. And she looks like her too. Like she had her apron and like gray hair. So we moved in with her, and she allowed us to like live with her, and my mom paid rent. We shared like a 1 bedroom. I mean, we went from like having separate rooms to a pool to, a playhouse, like to like having one room with 1 bed for like my sister, my mom, and I. And she babysat us like during the week. She walked us to like the school bus. Like she basically became like our mom while my mom was away. And so the agreement between her and my mom was that like she would babysit us for free if we would go help her like sell at the flea market. So like, I mean, we were 7 and 10. We had like to start working too. So my sister and I would get up like every weekend at 4 in the morning to go like sell at the flea market. And back then my sister was a little older than me, so she like sat like she would by herself like set up like 3 tables, like carry big boxes. Like she sold like most of like clothes, like bras, pants. And I only set up like 1 table, and it was like hats and like chicharrones. And I probably ate more chicharrones than like I sold because I was like, I mean, I was just a kid, like, forced to like become an adult. And we would go like every weekend. Like we had a job. It was I mean, the flea market was probably like, you know, the best. Like I have really great memories there. I feel like I made the most out of it. A lot of the people there like became our family. Like I remember there was like the girl that sold like bags. She used to give me free bags. The guy that like sold vegetables would give me like a free mango every weekend. And then like the Asian guy that like sold toys, like he was like my best friend. I used to go like I got my first like pair of wheelies there for free, and like I used to ride like up and down. So it was like, I mean, it really felt like family. But I feel like the effects of deportation like could still be seen because that guy who gave me my first pair of wheelies, my mom worked for him, like because we would work with Ama, but my mom would have like work with a like separate family so that she could like make more money. And he like got deported. That's what my mom told me, like not like maybe 2 3 years back. And like he left like his daughter and like his family. And it's just kind of crazy, when you're part of like an immigrant community, it affects you personally sometimes, or sometimes you're the undocumented or your family or the like all around your community, and you're just like constantly having to go through this trauma of like who's next, like who's gonna like yeah, who's next.
So, I know at some point you came to Illinois, and that's how you met Nancy. Obviously, she was your teacher. So, at what point or why did you end up coming to?
Because you left, right? You left after you left. She left to Mexico.
Oh, you guys decided to go back home. Okay.
Yeah, so when
to
I was
Mexico, I mean.
so okay, we got to see my dad like one more time. They took him to like an Atlanta prison. And like this is why it's so hard for like young boys and girls to distinguish between like criminals and like being an immigrant is not being a criminal. And I don't care if like crossing the border, we should decriminalize crossing the border. And it's just so hard because I remember going to that prison and like just like having like this bad image of like my dad, like is he a criminal, like why are we here? And that was the last time we got to see him, like until I turned 9, which is when I got to go to Mexico to visit him. And, unfortunately, my sister, like, she couldn't go because she couldn't come back. So she didn't get to see him for longer than I did. But when I went to Mexico, I just kind of like fell in love. And I don't know if it was because I wanted to have my family back together, but I think I really loved Mexico. I could walk everywhere. I like didn't have to ask for rides, I didn't have to go sell at the flea market. I could just like, be a kid again, like with my dad. And I made friends. All my family, I met my grandma for the first time. And like I remember she took me to like Las Maquinitas. We won like 200 pesos. Like we went from 5 pesos to 200. And my grandma's like the like biggest Christian. She would never, but like for me, she like went to Las Maquinitas with me. So I just kind of like I came back and I was like, you know what, mom, like you can stay here with my sister, but I'm gonna move with my dad. And so my mom was like, hold up, like, no. So then we were here for one more year. And then I just kept telling her, like, I want to go, like, I want to go. And so it was like through me, she was like, okay. And so when I was 10 and my sister was 13, we moved back. And my sister, like, she was like so against it. And I understand why now. Like back then, I was like, why wouldn't you want to go back to Mexico and be with my dad and like reunite our family? But I mean, she knew she couldn't come back, she knew she was undocumented. She knew that like once we made that step, like she wouldn't. And I mean, she hasn't been back since, and she's 25. So yeah, she was 13 when we left.
So you lived in Mexico for like 3 years, you said, right? 2 or 3 years, and then you came back.
I lived in Mexico for 5 years.
5 years,
So I
okay.
was 10 when we got there, and I was 15 when I came back. And I mean, when I moved there, it wasn't like that was the plan from the beginning. It wasn't like, oh, she's gonna come and then she's gonna leave. It was just like, we're moving back for good. But then, I did elementary school, like because in Mexico it's like till 6th grade. So I graduated 5th grade and then I had to graduate 6th grade over there. Um, and then I went to middle school and I started high school. And, as you grow older, I feel like you start facing, harsh realities. And for a time, I got to be like a kid in Mexico that didn't really have to like think about these things like I did in America. But it comes to a time when you see like your peers that get like murdered, for sometimes for nothing. Like you don't even know, like, were they a part, of bad, you know, mafia, like whatever you want to call it, or were they just like innocent? Like, I mean, I had like a really dear friend of mine who like got killed coming from a party, and like I like, to me, he wasn't. I mean, I knew him. Like we had lunch together almost every day, and like I don't. He wasn't. He didn't hang around. He wasn't like that type of guy, and he still fell in that trap, So, and then women, like to be a woman in Mexico, especially today and back then, it's like it's like a death sentence, like 10 women get killed every day in Mexico. So I think everything was just like adding up, and I kept seeing these, and I'm like, I'm not secure here. Like I'm starting to fear when I walk. I like opportunities, you start growing up, and it's like if I want to be a reporter, like I am not going to be able to be a reporter in Mexico because they get killed for trying to find out the truth and like trying to fight corruption. And my dad was like, you should go back. Like he was always the one to put that idea in my head. He was always the one like, you need to go back and like get an education over there. You can do it. Like you have like you're a citizen. Like why wouldn't you do it? And my mom was always the one that was like, no, like you're not leaving the house. Like she'd be like, kind of ignoring when we would have the conversation. Like she'd be like, I'm not listening. She was always really like against it. And I mean, I was 15. Like I feel like when you're young, you take like you act out of impulsion. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to America, like it's gonna be fine, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna go get an education, like it's everything's gonna be fine.
But how did it? That's a huge decision, right?
Yeah.
To make, to leave like your family
You were
again, right? Because that's
15,
what you were
right?
15.
Yeah.
So, how did your life change when you came back here? That's the point where I
Yeah.
met you, right, in high school.
Who were you like staying with? Like,
Yeah.
what was life like here, like on your own? Like, you were not even an adult yet, you know?
I think like it didn't really hit me, and I still had my quinceañera. So like I had my quinceañera in August and I left in October. So it was like my quinceañera, like my going away party, and it was like big. Like there was like 2,000 people there.
Wow.
Yeah, and everyone would come up like, you have time to rethink it. Like you really want to go. And my aunts would tell my parents like, están locos. Ella solamente se va a ir a embarazar, like they'd be like, I mean, she's like a kid, like she's gonna go get pregnant and like that's all she's gonna go do. And then I was like, I'm always that person that's like, okay, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Like, like you think I'm that girl, like I've never even had a boyfriend, so like, why are you putting me in? When I was here, I think leaving my parents was the hardest part. Like I didn't really think about it until the day we went to the airport. And like I was like, if you turn around and look at them and like see them crying while you're crying, like you're not gonna like leave. So like I was just like, you just need to get on the airplane and then like never look back. And then once I was here, I was like suffering. I mean, I cried almost every night because I still slept with my mom up to that point. Like I slept with her every night. So I like it was probably really hard for her to let me go. But I was like, I'm not going back. Like this is like what I'm gonna do. Like I have a purpose, and like no matter how much I'm suffering here, like I'm not going back.
Mm-hmm. Who were you staying with when you were here? Were you with family? And obviously, if it was family, it's not your parents. So what was that like? Yeah.
I feel like I stayed with like my stepsister's mom, and honestly, she was like the nicest. Like she was trying to be as welcoming as she could be. And I feel like up to that point, my mom had only like taught my sister, because like Mexicanos, they think que la hija más grande se va a casar primero, and then she has time to like teach her youngest daughter.
Yeah.
So my sister was the one that would like learn how to cook, learn how to clean, and I was always the one that was like, oh, ella está chiquita, ella le enseño cuando se vaya su hermana.
Yeah.
So when I came here, it's like I mean, I was just a kid, so like I don't think I didn't know how to cook.
Mm-hmm.
I barely cleaned. So like, como dice mi mamá, like el muerto y el arrimado a los 3 días apesta. And like I found that saying to be true wherever I went, because I mean, people do things differently, and your parents are like the only ones that will like take you as you are, and like have patience with you. And we paid rent with her. We paid like I think like 500 a month. So honestly, I left there because we were behind on rent. Like always, we were always like behind $1,000. Like we couldn't afford it. I had like a job with my sister on the weekends, but I made like $20. So it was just like not enough. And we had an uncle here in North Carolina who was like, oh, like if she goes to school here, she can stay with me for free. And so at that time, that sounded like the best decision for my parents, because I really had no say. Because I mean, I wanted to go back to Chicago. I was just starting to like, I had tried out for like a club soccer team and made it. And like, I mean, I loved, but like my sister, she's young. Like my stepsister, she was young. So I don't think she wanted to have the responsibility of taking care of me anymore. Because I mean, I get where she was coming from. Like she was young, she didn't have kids. Like why would she's just like my dad kind of just threw me at her.
Yeah.
So I came to North Carolina.
Yeah, I remember that when you told me, I was like, no, you had one more year, but you know, I know that like it was a difficult decision for you because you had your friends, like you said, you had your little crew already, and you were doing sports. I know you were playing soccer right at the school. And we missed you so much when you left. Like I think that we always like talked like, oh, we wish she were still here. But how was that, like, you know, that transition to a different state that was far away, and like having to sort of start over again in a different house without your parents, right? How did that senior year work out? And then like that's also the year you applied to colleges. So how did that work? How was that? That must have been a stressful situation for you to be alone navigating all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like when I was in Chicago and I got there as a sophomore, they made me take the ACT and I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know. I was like, what am I doing? They're like, you're taking an exam. And I was like, for what? Like, I mean, my English was probably even worse than it is now. Like I had strong accent, I was very Mexican, like with my Mexican boots and Mexican, like everything. And so I took the ACT when I was in Chicago without even knowing what it was. So my score was like an 18, and which is, I mean, you know what? I'm proud of it because my English was bad. I didn't even know I was taking the ACT. Like, so when I came here, I was like, honestly, like it was worse than in Chicago, like the situation at home.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allowed to do sports anymore. So he was like, you're going to school, you can go to work, and you can go to the gym with like us, like him and his family. So like that was all the things I was allowed to do. So I wasn't able to like do any clubs, any sports. And I mean, I wasn't the best at soccer, like, cause I was never really allowed to play. I think I started like old, but I really loved it. Like it was like, I think exercise, it just clears your mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bum. And then just like doing the same things over and over. And I would always like tell my parents, like, I'm not happy here. Like I try to do my best. I try to like clean, as much as I can. I try, I'm really trying, and it's just like it's not enough for them. Like I'm always like getting in trouble. I try to take care of their kids so that they can be happy, and like still like not being enough for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad would be like, you're about to be 18, like as soon as you're 18 you can leave, like you just wait it out, like just wait it out. And so that was always their answer. And that's what I was trying to do. So I don't think college was ever in my mind, because I was not happy. I was not worrying about college at all, probably until my senior year. And that's when like everything like got worse. So when I was like a senior, um I remember it was prom, and I still hadn't applied to any colleges, okay? Like I feel like when you're a kid, like especially when you're a kid of an immigrant, you don't really even know how to get to college,
Mm-hmm.
because like nobody tells you. And when you're someone like me who like doesn't even have her parents here or nobody to help her, because the people I live with, they never went to college and their kids were like elementary school still.
Yeah.
So it's like I hadn't applied. I knew I was going, but I didn't know how. And when I was like the day before prom, I remember that I'd asked my dad, like, oh, like I asked the woman to take me to get my nails done, and she said yes, but today her head hurts. Like, can I ask one of my friends for a ride? And then like just to get my nails done, I want to look cute. Like it's prom, every girl wants to look cute. And so my dad was like, yeah, just go, and I'll call your uncle and I'll tell him that I gave you permission. And I was like, oh yeah, because sometimes I'd go through my dad, because I'd be like, okay, if my dad says yes, like they can't say no.
Right.
So I remember I'm getting my nails done, right? I'm probably getting a pedicure and like getting like manicure. I didn't even get fake nails. It was just like gel. And the lady calls me and she was like, hey, like my head doesn't hurt anymore. I can take you to get your nails done. And then I was like, oh, like I'm already here. I was like, my friend picked me up and I came. I was like, I'm gonna go back as soon as it's over, that's all we're doing. And then she was like, oh, like, what do you mean you're there? Like, this is not a hotel, like you can't just come and go as you please. And she just like started going off. And I was like, no, like my dad said I could come, and he said that he would tell your husband. And so then I call my mom, who calls my dad, and then they're like, I told him. And then my uncle's like, you didn't tell me. And my dad's saying, I told him. And I'm like, so who's lying here? But like my mom is like, just, you have 1 more month before you finish high school, like just go back and act like nothing happened, like you always do, and just be happy. And I was okay, I'm just gonna go back and act like nothing happened. And I remember when I got there, like their daughter opened the door and she was like, oh, mommy said you can't come in because you left without permission. And I swear that she was there standing and she heard when her daughter said that. And I called my mom, I was like, oh, they didn't let me in. And then my mom's like, let me call her. And so then I'm like standing outside with my friend. Um, Her name's Raven. My friend Raven and I, like, we're standing outside and I could just hear her like screaming. Like her and my mom are going back and forth. And I'm just like, okay, like what's gonna happen? And then my mom just like they hang up and mom's like, you're packing your bags. You have to go. Like you're not staying there. And I'm looking at Raven and you know, I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, you have to go. Like, go pack your stuff and you're leaving. And then Raven's like, we can do I was scared. I was like, how am I gonna go in there and get my stuff? Like I'm always been like non-confrontational. And then Raven's like, I'm gonna go in there with you. Like, it'll be fine. Honestly, if it wasn't for Raven, I don't know what I would have done because she was like putting on a brave face and like because they were just there like staring us down. And she was like saying like, you're a liar, like my daughter never said that. And I was like, I wouldn't make this up. You were right there. And she's like, I wasn't there, I didn't hear her say that. And so I just like packed my stuff. And that was the night before prom. I had my prom dress. I had bought it and I'd paid it like in payments because I was working at the mall at Reebok for like since I was like 17. So I took my stuff and that night like I slept at Raven's house. Like I stayed with Raven that night in the night of prom. And I like she had a date and I kind of like went tagged along. So it was like the three of us, but like I mean, that was a fun night, even though I felt like I was like, I mean, it was fine for that time, but I knew that at some point, like, I had to find somewhere to go. And so the Monday, I went to like school and I went to my counselor and I was like, look, this is what happened. His name was Mr. Toscano. And like, I was like, my uncle, I know him. I was like, he's going to come here today and he's gonna like try to make a scene. I was like, whatever you do not call me down. I don't want to see them. I just don't want to deal with that. And I was like, because he had said he's like, I'm gonna like take you out of high school. Like that's what I'm gonna do. That was his like revenge to like, stop my education. And I was like, they're gonna try to take me out. Like I want to finish high school. I was like, just tell him I'm in class, tell him you can't call me down. And I go after school and I'm like, so did he come? He's like, yeah, he came. And I was like, I knew it. Like, I knew it. And he was like, he tried to like unenroll you. But I told him that, because you're still 17, the law says that he can't unenroll you unless he's going to enroll you somewhere else. And because he said he wasn't, what we did is that he's not your guardian anymore. And you're going to be on like McKinley Vento status. So basically, like, homeless, that's the homeless, like child being homeless. And I was like, okay, like that's fine. And then he was like, let's sit down and think, like, what are you gonna do next? He was like, are you gonna go to like a group home, like who, like family? Like he was like, I would recommend you to like not go to like a group home or like, foster care. He was like, they're not the best experiences. And then I was like, okay, well, I just need to talk to my parents. And then we like connected with like some family friends that we had here, and they were the co-owners of the business my dad opened. And she was like, so this is they're just family friends, but I called her tia and tío. Latinos, we tend to do that. So mi tia Sonia and mi tío Goyo. And they like came to pick me up. They were like, yeah, like we have an extra room, we just have to clean it, like you're welcome there. They saw us like grow up. And yeah, she just like welcomed me in. Honestly, like I can say that that's the one place where like I've been like the most comfortable, and she became like a second mom to me.
So obviously now like you're almost about to finish college. You've done all these successful things in regards to journalism. You made it through, high school and all those tough situations, like home situations, finding a home,
Yeah, at such a young age, right? Like most kids are worrying about what prom dress they're gonna wear, or like getting in trouble for like like extending their curfew that day, and you're over here thinking about where am I gonna live tomorrow, right? Like that's tough.
And you mentioned that while you were at Nancy's classroom, that she gave you a certificate for always smiling.
She was always smiling though. Like that's what I like admire so much about
Yeah.
Patsy, is that I knew her home situation. Like I didn't know everything. Like I knew what she would tell me, and I would tell her always, like, I always worry about you. But also as a first year teacher, I'm like, what are the limits of how much I can do for her? You know, but like I knew, and like I would always talk to her about my, like, to my family, like, oh, I have this student who's here alone. I just couldn't understand the situation, not thinking about it back then. I'm like, you know, that's so tough. Like you were a child basically on your own. How did you end up like you were basically like homeless for like a weekend, and like and then you found someone, you know, your parents helped you find someone else, but it's a different house, right? So you changed houses like 3 times already. When did, you know, I know you did like, and when you finished your associates, you got like, you were like valedictorian, if I'm not mistaken. And how did you do that? Like how did you end up being able to achieve that? Because you weren't even thinking about college, and then 2 years later, here you are, la más chingona de la clase. Like how did that? You were always intelligent. You always, I mean, you were always an A or B student, but like how did that happen?
And also, like, how did you keep smiling through the whole that whole thing? Like,
you're smiling now.
Yeah, like how did you find a way to smile through, you know, you're alone in this country, your family's back home, and you're struggling to find a place to call home, you know?
Wow, I feel like I have so many answers. But before I say something, honestly, Ms. Domínguez, I feel like you did like so much for me. Like I remember, and I still have it today, the jacket that you gave me, because I didn't have a jacket. I'm getting emotional.
I'm really crying. I remember that.
And literally, it's still in my closet. It's crazy. Like, I feel like those are the stuff that like keep me grounded, you know? And like always smiling is just like, they're nice people like that helped me like along the way, whether it was like the jacket or Mr. Toscano, like he used to like sneak me food after high school. And like, so that nobody would see, or like, you know, my tia Sonia, she was always there for me. Because like I feel like everything got worse before it got better. Because like my uncle, like he literally, like you would think that he'd give up, you know, I moved out, like I'm with a new family, but he came to my aunt's house to tell them that like I was a bad girl, and like that they shouldn't let me stay with them, that he wanted me to go back with him. And he was like, and you know, she does drugs. And he shows, this is so funny, he shows my aunt a like picture of ibuprofen in my bag. And because my cousin was there, my cousin told me the story after, and then he was like, my mom's like, that's ibuprofen, like what are you doing? And then my cousin said that his mom was just like laughing. He's like, look, like I've known her all my life, and if she's the way that you said that she is, then I'll get to know her, but she's not going anywhere. And then he was like, well, I'm gonna call the police because you kidnapped like a kid. And then she was like, call the police, like you're undocumented, I'm not, so let's see who loses. And then that's the only way that he left her house, was that she like kind of threatened him. And so after he left her house, he showed up at my work. And so I was working at Reebok, and I'm at the register, you know, working, and I'm already going through a lot, like, you know, like I'm like, my mental health at that point was like bad. And he shows up, and he like, I see them walk in, and I'm, you know, attending to a customer, I'm checking them out, and I'm like trying not to freak out in front of the customer. And I'm like, it's about to get real. And they just start screaming at me, like in front of the customer, in front of my manager, in front of my coworkers. And I just start crying. And he just like saying all these things. And I don't remember exactly what was said because it was just like all a blur, you know? And I run towards the back, and he's like following me. And so I go into the back room because I'm just trying to hide. And then he's like following me, trying to go into the back room. But then one of my coworkers came out and was like, he stood up, because my manager, like, I mean, they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what to do. So it wasn't until my coworker was like, you need to go or I'm going to make you go. Like they were about to get in a physical fight because he was just like screaming, like, and that's when like my parents were like, I'm going to address them. Like if we have to put a restraining order, that's what we're going to do. And until this day, I don't understand why that was going on. Like, I already left your house. Like, I didn't take anything. Like, y'all didn't give me any money. Like, I don't owe you anything.
Right.
I don't know, like, what's, like, I don't understand, like, what was the issue, like, why he wanted me back. Like, I mean, I don't get it till this day. And actually, when I had already gotten to college at UNC, like last year, I received a call and it was him trying to like apologize, and like he's like, my kids really miss you, and like, you know, my, especially my daughter, because like he had a daughter, and like I used to be like really close to them, like help her with her homework, and she was like, she wants to see you, like we could drive up to university. And I was like, you know what, I'm in class, like I'm gonna call you later. And then that was like, I never called him, I blocked that number, because he had called me from a different number, from like a private number. I mean, he knew I didn't want nothing to do with him, not after like all that show and him going around telling people that like I was a prostitute and that I had did drugs. And I was like, first of all, I'm still a virgin. Like, what are you doing? So it was, that whole experience sucked. And there was like some people in Mexico that like believed what he was saying. And if it wasn't for my aunt that was like always there to stand up for me, and she was like, she's not the girl you're describing. Like, I don't understand what the obsession was, but that was like going on. And so I was still finishing high school while all this is like happening. And I'm like meeting with Mr. Toscano, like like, you know, a lot, because he gives me food, like after school food for me to take. And then I applied to UNCC and I got in, but there was like no financial aid. And I kept like calling the office, like, hey, like I'm, you know, I have McKinley Vento status, which says I'm homeless. Like, my parents are not here. Like, I need a full ride or else I can't go to college. Like, there's no way I'm going to pay for anything. And their office was really bad at communicating. I never, like, I submitted every document they wanted. I never heard back. And it was like, at this point, I had already graduated. So Mr. Toscano was like, okay, like I know about this community college, like Central Piedmont. He's like, it's really good. You could just go there, you know, just go. And so my cousin drove me, and they were really helpful, like really nice. Like, I enrolled, I applied, I got in, and then I enrolled. They gave me in-state and financial aid from the government, like covered it completely because it's a community college. So that's how I got to like go to school. And then once I was there, like my first year, I like, I started to become like really active. Like, I was like in Rotaract, which was the service, and then like in student government, and I was taking classes. My aunt and uncle like would take turns like driving me there and back. And then my second semester, I just used like my financial aid money that was left over to like purchase a car that was like 1996, like 300,000 miles. It barely got me there and back, but it was like something. And my second, that that first year, my parents, they got divorced. Like, everything was just like bad. And I think that's really like when I got lost, like for the first time. Like, I could endure apparently everything else, but like once I felt like my sense of like the only sense of home and family I had like back home was gone, that's when I would just be in my room like depressed. Like, I have the lights off, like I wouldn't come out, and I didn't care about school anymore. Like, I just like I wasn't myself. And then my aunt, like, she would write me notes every day, and she'd leave them on my door. Like, come on, like, you have to, you know, like, pray, like, you're gonna come out of this. It's gonna be okay. And she's the reason, like, why I like started to get better. And like, I remember in Central Piedmont, my one of my advisors recommended that I apply for Camp Churio, which was a leadership conference. And then at that leadership conference, the first day, they were like, oh, we're gonna do an exercise. Like, everybody, like, we were in groups, and my group, it was like 6 other students and Miss Jen. And she was like, oh, like, draw your home. And like everyone had to like go up there and present their home. And I was like, well, what am I gonna draw? Because I don't know what to draw. Like, and so I just went up there with an empty piece of paper and I just like cried because I had no idea like what to say, what to draw. And so I feel like for the first time, I finally like just said everything that had been going on. Like I just stood up there and I like cried and I just like said everything. Like my dad got deported, like I left, I went to Mexico, I came back, like I got kicked out. And then like everyone was crying. It was so like everyone was bawling. And Miss Jen, like since that day, she like took me under her wing. Like she became like another mom. And she made sure that like I had groceries, like she'd buy me groceries. And one day my car like it needed a new battery and I couldn't afford it, so she bought it so I could keep going to school. And like this is a lady that like I had just like met for like a few months, and she was just like showing up for, and that's who she is though. Like she showed like I'm not the only student that she's helped. Like that she's an incredible, like amazing woman. And she submitted my name for like many awards. So like I got like North Carolina Academic Excellence. Like I got to meet like Governor Cooper, and I kind of told him like a little bit about like being like a daughter of immigrants and like, not having a home. And so he like created like a scholarship for homeless students after that, and it was pretty nice. And then I became the commencement speaker. They had like that year, the year I was graduating, they were gonna have a student speaker at graduation for the very first time in like 65 years. And they were like accepting like submissions. And Miss Jen, like she like submitted, and then I had like an interview. And I was like, well, if I get up there, I'd probably just like say my story so that people can be inspired, and like people like, that have had like their parents deported, like they can be like, they can know that like you can go somewhere. And I got chosen. So like I gave the commencement speech. So I was like the first student in 65 years to ever. I think the person who gave it before me was Joe Biden, the White House like first lady.
Oh,
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, she was like the speaker before me. And I applied to UNC, and because I like applied as my own, because I'm an independent like student, I got a full ride here. So that's the only reason why I got to come to university, was because I got a full ride based on like my income, which I only make like 7,000 a year on my own, part time.
So, speaking about inspiring students, what are some consejitos that you can give other students that might be right now living through what you lived through, or even just anyone that has been affected by deportation, and then as a result there's like family separation
And experiencing being
yeah
homeless and like,
yeah.
Like there's so many obstacles. Like what are some consejitos that you would give to others based on your experience and your life experiences?
I would definitely say that like your feelings are validated and like you're not crazy. Because I feel like for so long, I thought that I was like overreacting, like, whatever I'd gone through, like that wasn't an excuse for me to like be in my room, depressed. And like it's not like statistically, like kids who are separated from their parents, they're anxious, they're stressed more, they're depressed. Like these are studies that like have found. And I recently started looking into them like this past like months. And I'm like, I feel so validated. And but even if those studies didn't exist, like your feelings are validated, like what the immigration system has done to you, or what the system in general has done to you. Like if you're homeless but it's not for immigration, like your feelings are valid. And I know it's like hard, that's what I would say, like I know it's hard, but you have to find a purpose and you have to know like why you're doing it. Because for me it was always like, if I stop now, like what kind of image, what kind of like message am I sending to like the little girls back in Mexico, like my cousins who like, are just kind of aspiring to be wives, or like they know that there's not many opportunities. Like what kind of message am I sending them? What kind of message am I going to like send the Latinx community and like as a whole? And it just like, that's what kept me going, was like always wanting to be like a role model,
Yeah.
even though I'm not the best
I
or
think
like
you
not the
are. You
perfect
are
role model, but just like
definitely.
just wanting to like inspire people to come after me and be like, you can do it. Like it doesn't matter your situation. if you just like work hard, ask for help when you need it, because I took long to ask for help, but if I hadn't asked for help, I probably wouldn't be here. So like asking for help, it's not embarrassing, but you just like need to do it. And look for opportunities and just keep striving to do better.
I think it would be cool to end if you can just tell us like what are your plans? I know you're a senior, you're about to graduate.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the future? Where do you see Patsy in like five years? That's a tough question.
That's such a for so long I thought I wanted to be a reporter, and everything in my life that like drives me is immigration and bringing light to like these issues, because it's so much more than just families getting deported. It's like, what happens to these families? Like, they're forever changed. There's like long lasting impacts on children, on USA born children, and nobody's talking about it. Like, nobody's talking about like my stress, my anxiety, my mental health issues. Like, they're talking about, oh, like 500 immigrants got deported.
Yeah.
Everyone sat on Twitter for a day and then people move on. Or like, family separation at the border and everyone's sad for a day and then people move on. It's like, no, like these are long lasting effects that I will forever carry with me, that kids will forever carry with them. I mean, many, like probably like almost 1 million people have been deported that had like children. Like, ICE submits records to Congress every year that you can Google online, and you can see how many they've deported that have children. So I feel like for so long, I kind of wanted to bring light to this, but now I'm like, okay, if I really want to make a change, like, should I be involved in public policy where I can like push for policy? So in 5 years, hopefully, whatever I'm doing, I'm just like creating change and like making the life of like immigrant kids better so that they don't have to go through like what I went through.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very impactful and powerful, and I'm sure that anyone who listens is going to be moved or identifying with you. Like, I know that it has really affected our Latino community, but now even other communities. But yes,
I'm just I can't wait to see the change that you're gonna make, because I know that you're like you're an intelligent person that's super dedicated, and you will make change. So wherever you're at, whether it's public policy or journalism, like I know that we're gonna hear the amazing things you're going to do. And once again, I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for joining us and for opening up your heart, and sharing this story with others that, like Rosario said, we're 100% sure is going to motivate other youth and people who have experienced this as well. Thank you so much.
So, gracias también a todos por escuchar nuestro podcast. Remember to follow us on social media, all Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Give us a like. Follow us as Wáchame Podcast. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.